I've been making games with and for students for 10 years now, since I first entered academia. And in that time, I've learned a lot about games, about learning, about students, and about myself. I'm immensely grateful to so many colleagues across the university sector who encourage me to play with playful ideas, particularly the Playful Learning Association. And they supported my development while I developed games. A lot of those people are here today, so thank you sincerely. I know that you're going to learn a lot today about all the elements that go into making a good escape game, about puzzles, about flow, about narrative, about learning. And there's lots of methodologies, including my own, that you can download to help you out. So today I thought I'd take the opportunity to reflect on 10 years of educational escape game making, talking about 10 games I've been involved with and 10 lessons learned, or thereabouts. I ended up stopping counting, so you'll just have to let me know whether I hit the magic number. And hopefully even the most experienced among you today, and there are some very experienced people here, will pick up a new way of looking at something, or something that's of use. I just want to acknowledge as well that almost right from the start, I've been working with my civilian colleague, Toby Jones, who just does it for love of making games. He was a professional escape room run and games master for a while, and you'll be playing some of his games today, and he's games mastering for you from Utrecht. Just to say as well, before I move on, I'll share the slides on the Padlet for today, and also obligatory book plug. Please get the book for your library. Okay. So I wanted to be a teacher for a long while. I was running my own social media training consultancy by day and playing and running games like LARP, live action role play, in every gap I could. My mum was a teacher, my dad was a lecturer, so I had pretty much set my mind against doing it for a long time, and I was actively resisting the call. But when I started my own business, Reach Further, it was all about e-learning and training people in digital media skills. And I had far more urge to teach people to do the thing themselves than to charge them lots of money for doing it for them. So not the best entrepreneur. I read an article about this time about an alternate reality game, an ARG, called Reality Ends Here. And it was created to induct media students into the USC School of Cinematic Arts. The game got students creating films and other media in response to prompts provided by cards that they collected for solving puzzles. It became so popular and distracting for the students that the schools banned it, wanting the students to concentrate on more academic endeavours. So next year, the students started running it for themselves underground. And I thought, if this transmedia, multi-platform, narrative and puzzle-based teaching is what teachers are doing these days, and students are doing, I'm in. And then the same week I read that article, a lecturing role in social media came up at Leeds Trinity University, and I sold my business and I started teaching. And a lot of today is going to be about those two things coming together to make something new. So I was going to be teaching digital media on a new programme that included a module on project management of media productions. And in order to apply the knowledge and skills the students developed, we came up with an idea for an immersive game to help students settle into the university. So the students created and developed and play tested and ran several versions of a game called Homicidium, except they called it a web-based interactive nomadic learning experience. It took students around the university using their own mobile phones and apps like augmented reality to find books in the library, log into Moodle, visit the Students' Union and work with their new friends to solve a murder. Murder seems to be a running theme in my games as well. I'm not quite sure why. They ran the game several times over induction week, despite the fact that they'd been assessed for it the previous year. And as second years, they weren't themselves due back on campus until a week later. So like with Reality Ends Here, the students adopted the game as their own vehicle for learning and teaching. And I hadn't even heard of the word co-creation at that time. It's also worth noting that now, in the age of AI, this sort of complex and very individualised assessment is ideal for ensuring students submit all their own work. And in the case of Homicidium, the assessment was not about the game. It was about how they pitched, managed, and evaluated the project. And the players' experience was not just about the murder mystery, but about getting to know each other and the university campus and systems. This intertwining of outcomes, this idea of warp and weft, will reoccur today. And that's what you are doing. There's what you are doing, and there's what you are doing it about. So there are two layers of interlocking parts, and that's how puzzles work too. You can have a look at the Homicidium pitch. There's a couple of videos still on YouTube. They did win the JISC Summer School of Student Innovation competition that year. £5,000, which they didn't share with me. Didn't even buy me a bunch of flowers. Anyway, let's get your brain working. Those of you that haven't been on an escape room yet. So this was a puzzle made by Robin, who was a 7-year-old who attended, occasionally do workshops outside for kids in the school holidays. And this was a young inventors workshop. And he made this 15 minutes in. He knew exactly what the whole thing was about. And it helps me make a point. I don't know if anybody's solved it yet. I'm just going to turn it round because this might help. So what we have here is the letters woof actually also represents the numbers 4003, but that's just part of the puzzle. The other part of the puzzle, as always in combination lock puzzles in escape rooms, is you have to figure out the order of those digits. There's always, not always, usually at least two parts or two layers to a puzzle. So for this particular one, the order would be 4300 would be the answer that would help you get into the padlock. Here's another one for you. I'm just going to do these really quickly just to warm up your brains and also just to make a point about how you design puzzles or how I design puzzles. And I'm here to learn all the other ways. So this one is basically a trick when you suss it out what's going on, and that this is just a digit on the left-hand side reflected on the right-hand side. Once you see the trick, the code becomes obvious. It's 5930. Now, here we are. If you find this code maybe on a lockbox in a room and there are these colourful symbols around the room, what's the answer now? So those of us who've done a lot of escape rooms, which I guess is a lot of people here, will probably very quickly realise you put the numbers in the order of the symbols. So we end up with 3059 is the solution. So note that finding the symbols and the code might itself be a layer of the puzzle. Who else always forgets to look under a box? I always do. I'm no good at searching in escape rooms. Or you might uncover each symbol individually, and then this puzzle would become a very simple, crude, but it would become a meta puzzle, which means it's only solvable when all of the parts have been found. So the answer for this one, the answer for that one was 3059. And then in this version of the puzzle, this time you've got some distracting elements. So you have to eliminate the irrelevant information, the additional symbols, before you can solve it. So we've got three layers there. We've got the numbers, we've got the order, and we've got an elimination mechanism. And that gives us a lot to play with because we can embed the learning objective in any of those three parts or have learning objectives in all of those three parts. So just to let you know, the answer to that one, therefore, is 6271. Now, one of the things that frustrated me when I first started getting involved with escape games for learning is a lot of people in the early days were saying the only thing the only place you learn in an escape room is right at the end, you know, in the reflection afterwards, where you actually help the students put it all together. And although that's important, there are a lot of different ways that you can learn in an escape room. And this is from one of my chapters in the book that I wrote with Scott, which is all about trying to actually match those learning objectives to the types of puzzle and the types of scenario that you're going to build. So I'm going to go through a few games with you and just tell you some of the things that I learned from them. So that they're almost in chronological order. So this is one of my early games. It actually started life as a game for sixth formers to recruit them for our forensic science and criminology degrees. And then the game was such a success that we used the same scenario to then teach the ethics of crime scene journalism. So the students were locked in a room. They had about 55 minutes, I think, to escape. And there was lots of information. So it was all accurately portrayed exactly as that information would be presented in an investigation. There were 45 possible subjects, and each of them had a photograph of a member of staff. So we got all the staff colluding in this with us. And the chap you see there is Ray, who was at our time our Pro Vice Chancellor. So the students had to split up to look through all of this information and do it fast and collaborate fast as well. So there were 34 level 4 journalism and broadcast journalism students. They were doing practical journalism. One, they had little experience of real life reporting, and groups of 7. My ideal number, by the way, is 5 for an escape room team. I don't know if that's your finding as well, but that's my favourite. But after they'd done the escape room, they had to do a news conference. It was a 30 to 45 minute press conference in an adjoining room, during which the students took the role of journalists. They were faced with the challenge of asking questions based on the statement Rebecca made in the role of Chief Inspector of the Police, and it tested their interview and questioning skills. Also, based on the evidence they had found in the room, if they asked the right questions, she also gave them quotes from other key sources. And at the end, they handed in a written copy of a statement and supporting quotes, which they used in the following workshop. This tested their skill of disseminating information and writing the news. It promoted teamwork, organisational and communicational and journalism skills. More than 85% said they enjoyed it or really enjoyed it. It promoted self-confidence and a healthy sense of competition. Everybody turned up, everybody, even though it was actually spread out over 2 days and they had to arrive and do it in a team of 6. And in the end of module assessment, 28 out of 32 students included the report based on this activity, despite it being a much more difficult piece of work. So some of the lessons we learned there were we needed to keep it simple. We allowed the students to make choices, explore opportunities, and work on a real life story in a safe and non-threatening environment. The tricky bits was dressing the classroom and keeping a classroom for 2 days in order to get all of the teams through it in teams of 6. And so I needed to think of a new way of doing it because that wasn't sustainable. And the students wanted to learn more. One group of students finished 15 minutes early. And when we said, oh, go and get a coffee before the journalism bit, the press conference, they said, no, get out of the room. We're going to re-examine the evidence and find out what we need to know to ask the best questions. I was like, oh my gosh, these students are pushing the lecturer out of the room, giving up coffee so they can do more learning. The students really relate to these. And just a nice quote from one of the students here: the escape game allows you to apply your logic and investigative skills, which is good practice for investigative journalists. There may be situations where you as a journalist may have to piece together things in order to gain the necessary information for an article. So the students are understanding and seeing for themselves the connection with their learning. So another case study is Death by the Book, which was actually done before, immediately before a revision exam. It was a mock exam, not the real exam. And one set of students did the escape room first and then the mock exam. Another set of students did the mock exam and then the escape room. And of course, you guessed it, the ones that did the escape room first actually did better in the exam. However, I'd love to do a piece of work that says, does the escape room even need to be related to the subject? Because I've had such good experience of escape room and puzzle-based activities just being really good to turn your brains on. And those of you that have already been in an escape room this morning are probably feeling really alert and really ready to learn right now, where the rest of us are maybe wanting some coffee. So the format of this game was different. I wasn't going to try and imitate escape rooms and do 6 people in a room. So we did tabletop. I'd tried this already for a 20-minute exercise as part of a team building, not team building, more group building at the start of an assessment day. And so I used this format again. So it was a 45-minute game done on a tabletop. The briefing video was played at the front of the conference room on the big screen, and it was a murder mystery again. And we use this tabletop format a lot. Once you have the kit, you can repurpose it for different rooms. And in our largest room, we can have up to 15 teams. If we don't have chairs, funnily enough, I noticed that if we don't have the chairs, which we had to do out of necessity because there wasn't room for students and chairs, we had to make a choice. But having the students stand makes a natural barrier between the groups as they surround the tables, and it literally keeps them on their feet and promotes higher energy levels. The students that start pulling the chairs in from other rooms or from the side of the room and sitting down are the ones that aren't going to actually succeed, or they're certainly not going to be the fastest. So the game flow for this game was linear, and I think this is important. So rather than having branching puzzles or having lots of people do lots of things at a different time, and this is another reason why I keep the group size relatively low at 5 people, this particular game is about creating a set of accounts, and that is done one calculation at a time, and that's what they have to do in the exam. So we wanted to recreate the thought process and enforce that practice in the escape room. And linear is also important whenever you want the students to experience the same journey. Because if they're doing different puzzles, they've all got different things to say. Now, that can be useful if you're doing the jigsaw classroom, which I've also done, and I'll talk about in a minute. But also linear is really good if you want the students to coach each other and actually talk about what they're doing and all be at the same stage. So the puzzle format for this particular game was to have 2 pieces of information, a prompt from the investigator, which was normally from the inspector in charge of the case. And once you actually figured all of that out, remember it's an accounting game, so it was physically a 4-digit or 5-digit number that they put into a combination lock. So, for example, they were given a profit and loss statement from company 1, a profit and loss statement from company 2, and were told that the turnover of company 1 is higher than company 2. But does it mean it's more successful? So to uncover the motive for the murder, or a possible motive, we need to know which company is more profitable in the last financial year. So that worked really well. You can see how that fitted together. And yes, my colleague Scott Nicholson, who I wrote the book with, would say that this is a very formal way of doing a puzzle. And I did throw in some other puzzles. There was a red reveal. There was a puzzle around moving around the office and drawing numbers. But I'll tell you more about that in a minute. I just want to tell you about another puzzle that we had where they had to add up the receipts for expenses in a particular financial year, but this was complicated. Some of the receipts didn't belong in that financial year, and some of those receipts weren't valid business expenses. So you can see how they're having to use their skills, problem solving, critical thinking, and analytical skills, and their knowledge of accounts in order to eliminate what's not needed and then get the results they wanted from what was left over. Just to segue quickly into another escape game I was involved in creating, we did one around qualitative research methods. And apologies, this is my original note, my original design note. So you can see how simple it is. It's literally just, back of an envelope puzzle. So they have to listen to 12 audio clips and decide whether they are structured, unstructured, or semi-structured interviews. And the order of the digits is obvious from the question. So it's just a one layer. But what information would those interviews reveal? If you're going to get the students listening to 12 interviews, there's all sorts of information you can give away in that and take that narrative forward. And note also that the team has to collaborate and trust each other. There isn't time for 5 or 6 people each to listen to the 12 recordings. So you can have QR codes linking to the audio files. And just a quick note that organising the group into completing the task is also a task. So there are collaboration, leadership, delegation, problem solving skills going on here at that level too. So that was just a quick segue out. But back to our accounting game, very positive response from students. We actually got some wrong the first time we ran it. So always play test everything in advance several times. You'll hear me say that a lot. And if it requires external knowledge, some students may not have this, remember, but that's where the students start coaching each other. And the students preferred the accounting puzzles. When we got the feedback later, they said they wanted more puzzles related to the exam and thought the fun ones, my red reveals and things, were a bit of a waste of time for, they were just about to go into an exam. So that really taught me not to dumb things down, and to really think about what's the purpose at that moment in time of that game for the students. Some of the feedback, it required a lot of accounting skills and made me turn my problem solving skills on. And always one of my favourite bits of feedback is it didn't feel at all like I was in a lesson. And I just want to point out again that coaching of each other, that students volunteering to share their skills and knowledge without any cringe or any embarrassment is a really key part of what can be achieved in escape rooms. So just another example, this was the perfect. Somebody said, could you do an escape room based around the idea of the locked room scenario in the golden age of detective fiction? Funnily enough, yes. And this is one of my longest running games. This one, we've actually divided up into stations. So remember, I'm trying to get away from 6 people in a room because that doesn't fit a timetable. So we had 20 students for this the first time we ran it. So we had 4 stations, a suspect at each. There was a murder, and they had to go around and go to each of the different stations and interview the suspects by solving the puzzles, finding out information. They had 3 puzzles at each location, and then they'd find a piece of evidence at the end. There were physical clues, so they were off their phones, which is one of the reasons why I started doing this. Remember, I teach digital media, so my students are on their phones and on their laptops all the time. And each little mini game, they were allowed 15 minutes. And if they didn't get the evidence, then they had to get it from someone else later. So this is what it actually looks like in practice. It's in its 6th year now. It puts the students in the role of detectives solving a murder in the style of Agatha Christie, Arthur Conan Doyle, Edgar Allan Poe. It's gone through many iterations, inspired by the Jigsaw classroom. I thought it would be fun to have students solve a series of mini escape rooms, and then they get this piece of evidence, as I said. What they do is they take a photo on their phone and move on, and then I reset it. That's one of the issues with this game, is you have to reset it quickly and fast between teams. If they don't manage to get all the evidence, then they have to talk to the other teams and ask them what evidence they found. And the shape of this game means it can be played by 4 students who just go around it on their own, or even 2, not that I've had that few, up to 24 students. The first thing you notice in the classroom when the game is played is the volume level. In fact, in the 2nd year we ran it, we moved it to much earlier session in the academic year so that students will get used to this level of interactivity and dialogue in their classes right from the start. One year we had a much bigger class, so I introduced a 5th suspect, the housekeeper, and this led me to create a session called The 6th Suspect, where our foundation year students play the game and then they create their own suspect and 3 puzzles to fit into the storyline that exists. The following year, I was teaching PGCHE on game-based learning, and I just wanted to give a flavour of the game. So each team only completed 2 suspects, and that worked even better with the students reading out the love letters and the diaries with lots of drama and lots of fun and laughter. And this strong narrative and emotional engagement was very appropriate for a literature class based on novels. It's also wonderful to witness. So the game format now lends itself. If the students are taking too long over the games, I give them more time, and then they don't get to do the final game, but then they talk to each other. And then right at the end, they have to say who they think did it, present their case, and do a bit of persuasive pitching to see if they were the people who solved the murder correctly. So this one's still going. I am happy to share these games, by the way. If anybody wants any of these games, I can give you the whole lot, kit and caboodle, not a problem. Well, not the kit. You'll have to buy the boxes and the padlocks, but I can give you the files. So this is gone viral, which I started as just an induction game for the students to have fun and get to know each other. It became a real commercial escape room. I wrote it with Toby Jones. Ironically, it was based on the pandemic and closed on because of the pandemic. So we filmed it in 360 and put it online using Telescape. So some of you are playing this game today. And then the Global Clinical Supplies Group Conference Committee played it, loved it, and asked if we would make one bespoke to them on a similar subject to teach supply chain management in the pharmaceutical industries. So Toby developed a prototype. And you can make something similar to this in ThinLink. But if we look at the prototype, which we've got across the top, and then you look at the actual final version, or actually this is a late prototype version. I think in the final version, the green circles for the hotspots have gone. Can you see how cute this is? The little, I mean, this, I'd quite happily play the game in its original hand-drawn version. I think it's really good fun. And I think some of the games commercial games that went online during the pandemic that did the best were the ones that actually thought about how can I use the fact that this is digital. So there's one called The Rise of the Fungi, which is all done with puppets online, and it's a miniature escape room, but it doesn't matter. So think about how you, when you're moving online and doing digital, how does the fact that it's digital change what you can actually create? It's like some of the stuff I'm doing now with AI, I can only do because we have AI, but I might talk a little bit about that later if we have a chance. So this is the first prototype of Broken Chain at the top. You'll notice that the puzzle on the door is already fully rendered because it was very difficult to write, and it made a lot more sense just to do the final version straight away rather than a prototype version. But what this taught me is actually, for learning purposes, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, in the same way that they didn't have to experience the whole game to get a whole experience out of the locked room game. In this case as well, you can teach quite a lot. And in fact, the lower the production values, the less it feels like a commercial game, the more it feels like a work in progress that the students feel that they can contribute to. So I always tell the students that they are playtesting, that you want their feedback, that it might not be perfect yet, and that way they become collaborators or co-creators, not victims of some evil genius that's locked them in the room. And playtesting puzzles is in any case vital. And if making that part of the experience itself, so I've created a new room for the Sherlock Holmes game, and I will say one of the tables is a playtest. Tell me afterwards which table you thought it was. So bringing them up to that meta level and involving them in that process really helps with the learning and really helps with the acceptance of the rather unusual way you're choosing to present it. And if the students can relax, and they can think, well, actually, it's not me, it's the puzzle, and they can say that to me and feel confident with that, that's absolutely fine by me. So talking of play testing, this is a puzzle I created for June's Journey. If you're interested, go on YouTube, have a look at June's Journey. We did a whole interactive murder mystery live 1920s themed thing at Broughton Castle, Broughton Hall near Skipton, and it was a mobile game celebrating its 6th anniversary. And I was hired to help turn it into a proper escape room / reality TV series / murder mystery weekend. So this is me in Affection Juniverse hat. But I did the love letter puzzle that was inspired by the Kane's jawbone, which sort of came back to prominence on TikTok during the pandemic when people had a lot of time to read. And it's a puzzle about sorting things into order. So this is a series of love letters that you have to put in order, that are undated. You have to put them in order to solve the puzzle. The original Kane's jawbone was only solved by 4 people so far. I had to make sure that this was non-trivial but solvable. So I actually had people from all over the world working on it, and I noticed that somebody who appeared today, Nick, is also here, so she play tested it for me. But I don't know if you know, on Facebook there are loads of escape room groups, puzzle making groups, puzzle testing groups, where you just have to post up your puzzle and say, I'd like people to play test it. Honestly, you get 20 replies within an hour and you're done. And what's great, because it's international, you can set it up before you go to bed. And by the time you wake up in the morning, it's been play tested several times. So it's great for that. I've also used Miro actually during the pandemic. I was involved in the Escape Your Stereotypes program. It was Erasmus Plus funded, We don't get that anymore. Boo to Brexit. But this was one around building a methodology for creating escape games that tackle prejudice and stereotypes. And COVID meant I never actually got to visit some of the partners in that. But what we did was we still carried on developing it. And then we moved the dissemination workshops and some of the puzzles, not all of the puzzles, online. And I don't know if anybody's here who did that, but it worked really well, even in its half form. We just had 3 puzzles, but actually the outcomes and the discussion that we had around that was very rich. There's a lot of interactivity built into Miro, and you can gate information. You can see some of those have got the little closed eye on them and they're hidden for now. So they could pull out for themselves on the left-hand side some hints, and you can see the hints I've color-coded for the backgrounds of the puzzles. And on the right, there's a section built in. So immediately after they've played the game and tested this prototype, they can actually, there's post-it notes under there, and they can post their post-it notes. They can even post little videos if they want to. And then everything about that iteration of the game is held in Miro, and you can just duplicate the original game as many times as you like. And then you end up with this very, very rich source of data and record of all of the prototyping that you've done. So I thoroughly recommend using Miro and reaching out to the puzzle community to create games. And the free methodology that came out of this, you can download at escapeyourstereotypes.org. There's a free methodology, and there's a game as well that you can use around getting rid of prejudice and stereotypes. So the next example is one that we use where we use a puzzle hunt for assessment. So it's basically escape room style puzzles spread across 5 days. There isn't particularly a narrative. The narrative is just you need to solve these puzzles. So they have 1 puzzle a day and a meta puzzle on Friday. And this is all part of their professional skills and placement module. So the way I implemented it was using Action Bound, and I gave them a new QR code to scan each day. Since then, in the later versions, I haven't amended it yet, but you can now actually schedule posts with Action Bound, so it will release them automatically on a daily basis. Now, we didn't want it to be trivial. So some years we've had 80% of the students get through. Some years we've only had 20% of the student get through. It's deliberate. We want them to grapple with it. Note that I say grapple, not struggle. And I will ask the students when they're playing and getting frustrated, maybe, are you grappling with the problem, or are you struggling to solve it? Do you want to grapple a bit more? And when it's put like that and they realize it's part of the game and it's part of the learning and it's part of the process, mostly they just say, actually, yeah, we're gonna meet up, get our heads together, we're gonna give it another go. It's also, instead of having lots of different tables with the different mini escape rooms on, it's a serial game. The encounters are spread over time. This year, for the first time, I'm doing a game that's going to be 30 minutes, the start of all of my marketing classes across 10 weeks of the semester. So we'll see how that goes. So this is an example of one of the puzzles. They have to solve a puzzle every day to get a 3-word clue. And on the final day, they find out that all of those 3-word codes are what 3 words locations, such as cherry, pull, pinch, here. And at each location, there is a blue plaque. So these are all locations in Leeds that have a blue plaque. And each plaque is part of a cipher or has a cipher on it, which when decoded gives them the 5th and final location, which is the end of the hunt. And this blue circle that you see on the left, it was a recurring motif across the 4 days that wasn't explained. But by the time day 5 came and they were actually landing their little peg man on the 360 street view of Leeds, they would be going, oh, there's a blue circle, what's that? And realise that it was the plaque. So the idea was it would make that connection. So students are actually assessed by a team presentation reflecting on how they worked together and applied their learning by discussing, among other things, Tuckman stages of team development, active listening, inclusivity, conflict resolution, the NERIS test, which is a psychometric test about team roles based on Myers-Briggs type indicator, the convergent and divergent thinking, and problem solving and collaboration. So they did a group presentation on this, and the marks are peer adjusted. So individuals are rewarded according to their contribution as valued by their teammates and themselves. The students really love this task, even though some of them obviously don't solve the whole thing, or they get to day 3 or they get to day 4 and they can't complete it. All of them get somewhere. The puzzles get progressively harder. The first day is a crossword, yeah, which I wouldn't normally use, but it's the puzzle that it's something they can solve together, feel happy with, and then it's got other puzzle solutions buried inside that crossword in the meta puzzle on the 5th day. So all of the teams had team names and they had to present, and one of the teams was called Loaf, because that was the initials of all of their first names. And at the end of their presentation was a what 3 words location, cute, convinced method. And when I and my fellow examiner went to look at it, it was actually a Warburton's depot for the team Loaf. So, they've really taken this on board and then, given us Easter eggs. Real example of students getting very engaged in what they are doing and appreciating the work that we have put in for them to make that type of assessment happen. And I need to just mention this. I know this isn't an escape room. It's a Starship Bridge simulator. And here's Carlos and Jack, 2 of my level 6 transmedia production students, having a whale of a time. For over a decade now, enthusiasts have been creating Starship Bridge simulators and scenarios. There's actually lots of different software that you can use for this. And I got an enthusiast to bring his kit in for a day in the business school, and students, academics and professional staff, the IT team or part of the IT team came, and they all booked their roles and we mixed them all up and it was great fun. And I wanted to include this because never have I had a day where everyone was just grinning from ear to ear from start to finish. For such a large percentage of the time. They should give this out on the NHS. If anyone would like to work with me on bringing this deep space joy into higher education, let me know, because it's just marvellous. So some of the other things I'm up to and that I'd like you to join in with, I'm doing a marketing mega game. So a mega game is what it sounds like. It's a huge board game that's played by lots of people at once. I've played mega games that are up to 300 people at once, and you're all in teams. Students learn how to use AI to iterate fast and experience how agencies and clients work together. I'm just working on that one at the moment. I'm also just become aware in the last 6 months or so of a really popular hobby in China called Jubentia, which stands for script murder. And it's a form of live action role play that at the end of it, it's very formulaic. And at the end, every individual has to basically answer an exam paper on what they found out and what they know about the scenario. And you get marked out of 100. And I just think, gosh, you could use that for assessment. I also want to do a Starship Bridge simulator Jubentia mashup. I'm doing some project management scenarios and some police apprenticeship scenarios in Twine, which is an interactive branching text-based game, but you can put images, video, other media in it. And I'm also creating an enterprise-related, entrepreneurship and enterprise-related cooperative board game. So if you're interested in any of that, please hit me up. And that's it from me. If you want to book Gone Viral or Broken Chain, I gather there's some places left this evening. Toby is there he's in Utrecht and he will be games mastering for you. That's my link tree. And does anybody have any questions? And it's a miracle I've ended bang on time.